Okay, let's talk about the top family-friendly neighborhoods in Calgary. Now, this is just meant to be a brief summary. It's a huge city, so I can't go into every neighborhood detail by detail, but I'll give you a kind of like the rough idea of what to look out for. Now, I'm making this video through the perspective of a family, so I'm looking at things like safety, good schools, parks and recreation, amenities, services, areas that don't have huge traffic, just stuff like that, low crime rates. And so let's get right into it here. Now, the first area of the city here, the most obvious answer, I think this part of Calgary right here, from Upper Mount Royal all the way down to Bel Air, everything kind of between 14th Street to Glenmore Trail to McLeod. This chunk of the city right here is arguably the most expensive part of the city. You've got huge mansions, huge lots, homes that are backing onto the Elbow River. Just a very luxury, exclusive part of the city. So if you've got the money, and also I should mention some of the good schools of the city are also located in this part of town. So if you have the money, this is the easy answer. This is where I would look. But some of these homes are going for $2 million plus, so it is a bit of a pricey area, not for everyone. But that's the easy answer here. Now, if I zoom out here, as a family, if I had a wife and kids, I wouldn't be looking in the downtown core. I don't think I would be looking in the Beltline. Sun Alta, maybe, but it wouldn't be my first choice. Place like Mission and Earlton, I don't think I'd be there with a big family. These are cool areas, but maybe not the best for families. I would look at Scarborough, this little section over here. This is kind of like a historic, rich area with some old mansions, but not many homes sell here, so it's a cool area, but it's maybe not the most obvious choice. This section over here, South Calgary, Richmond, South Calgary, I think on the border here between kind of like 14th Street, you see a lot of like condos, duplexes, townhouses. Not the best for families, but as you get towards the Crowchild Trail area, you get into the Marda Loop part of town. Definitely I would consider this area. The Marda Loop is one of the more trendy parts of Calgary, but if you get into the Altadore area just south of Marda Loop, this is a prime family neighborhood. You get excellent access to some of the top schools in Calgary. Some of the best parks are located in Altadore. You've got Sandy Beach Park over here, nice dog parks, just good stuff for adults as well. You've got lots of restaurants, bars, so it's got a bit of everything for everyone, the Altadore area. I would put a star beside this area. And that also includes North Glenmore Park, which is this part of town right here. This area I like quite a bit. So I'll move into the west end of Calgary, and that refers to this section of the city right over here. Now, you can't go wrong with anything in the west end. This is one of the most desirable parts of Calgary. On average, the west part of Calgary has the most expensive real estate. If you lump in everything like condos, townhouses, detached homes, this is the priciest part of Calgary outside of this region over here. And I'll start on the far west end here. So Springbank Hill, Aspen Woods, West Springs. You can't go wrong with this area. This is very luxurious. Some of the best schools in Calgary, some of the best private schools in Calgary are also located in this neighborhood, in these neighborhoods. You got lots of shopping along some of these busy roads like 85th and 69th Street. You've got some nice parks throughout this neighborhood. Easy commute to downtown. I'd say from like Aspen Woods to downtown, it might be like 15-20 minutes. These areas, they're very exclusive, so crime I don't think is much of an issue in these areas, so it's very safe. Again, good schools, good real estate prices, very desirable part of the city. Now, if we go north of West Springs, we'll come across Cougar Ridge. This is a very family-friendly, safe neighborhood, good schools, and it's not nearly as expensive as West Springs, Aspenwood, and Springbank Hill. So if you're maybe a younger family starting out, I would put a star beside this part of town. This could be an option for you. Now let's look at this part of town right here, from Christie Park, Strathcona Park, Coach Hill, and Patterson. This part of Calgary is a bit older compared to this area, but I like this area. Patterson's one of my favorite neighborhoods in the city. This is a giant hill going all the way from downtown all the way up into these areas. So you've got excellent views of downtown. This whole part of Calgary is very safe as well. Some of the better schools are located around here as well. Excellent parks. Now, I find this region of the city, it might be a bit of an older demographic, especially in parts of Patterson where you see a lot of like retirement residences. But I still think this region of the city is definitely very family friendly. Again, lots of good parks, schools, very safe, very scenic. Again, you can't go wrong with anything on the west side of Calgary. Further south here, Signal Hill. Definitely, I would consider this area as well. Not as fancy as, say, Springbank Hill or Aspen Woods, but not far off. Very convenient location. You've got excellent access to this huge shopping center over here. It's a large neighborhood. There's a lot of schools here. Very safe as well. I wouldn't have any issues moving into this neighborhood with a family. In this chunk of the city, from Wildwood all the way down to Glamorgan, you see a lot of these old kind of 1960s bungalows with back alleys. The homes next to you aren't like right up on you. I like this part of town. It's definitely not as expensive as over here in the Aspen Woods area. And this could be a good spot to move into if you're trying to get into the West End. It's more affordable than other parts of the city. And I would have no problem at all moving here. I actually lived in Glenbrook in the past and no issues whatsoever. So very safe neighborhoods, lots of schools, lots of shops along 37th Street, and you have the West Hills Shopping Center over here. You've also got, the Mount Royal College over here, Mount Royal University, sorry, over here. So a good spot of the city. You can't go wrong with anything over here. Let's go across the river and touch on the northwest part of the city. Now, first things first, so if we go just across from Princess Island Park, we'll come across the Kensington area. Kensington is more known as kind of like a trendy spot, lots of bars, restaurants, and shops along 10th Street and Kensington Road. But if you get away from these areas, this is all very residential. So you have some homes that are well above the average price in Calgary. Excellent location right across from the downtown core. Lots of good schools around here. It's a very entertaining area. You can walk from the Kensington area all the way into the 10th and Kensington Road where all the shops and restaurants are. So it's got a good mix of everything. So this whole section of the city, Sunnyside, Hillhurst over here, West Hillhurst over here, even Parkdale, I would lump these kind of all together. That kind of like luxury homes that are not far from downtown, good amenities, and very safe neighborhoods as well. Good parks too. You got Riley Park over here. You've got McHugh Bluff, this big green space. You've got Princess Island Park. You've got all the pathways. So if you're a fitness person all along the river, you've got a giant pathway for cycling and running, walking your dog and stuff like that. This chunk of the city over here, I would definitely consider this as a family. This might be my first, my most obvious location to pick as a family. This giant chunk of the city right here. It's very grid-like. It's on top of this hill, not far from downtown, but maybe 10-15 minutes from downtown. But it's very residential. There's a lot of schools around here, a lot of parks. You have Confederation Park right over here. You've got Nose Hill Park right up here. This part of Calgary is just very, it's very livable. It's not far from downtown, so it's not a huge commute. But again, it's very residential, very quiet. I find it's very safe. And it's very up and coming. A lot of these homes in here are being knocked down to make way for infills. So if you want a brand new home that's kind of residential, that's not far from downtown, I would definitely consider this part of town. But you can also buy like a 1940s bungalow in this area too and maybe renovate it. So the prices aren't out of control here like they are maybe south of the downtown. So I would definitely consider this whole area of the city kind of has a similar feel to it. Bowness comes to mind. A lot of schools in Bowness. This used to be its own town at one point. So it has like a very town-like vibe. A lot of parks in this neighborhood. A lot of stores and shops along Bowness Road and 16th Avenue. Bowness gets kind of a bad reputation. There are parts of Bowness that are maybe a bit slummy, but there are parts of it where you can buy like a $3 million home. So, and everything in between. So I would definitely consider this area. It's not a bad neighborhood. It's actually very up and coming. And you can lump in Montgomery in that same criteria as well. Next up, let's talk about the Tri-Wood area. So that's three neighborhoods. You have Collingwood, Charleswood, and Brentwood. So this chunk of the city, I would definitely consider with a family. Very safe, very scenic, very friendly. You've got good stores. You have the C-Train line. You've got easy access to some shopping centers, Market Mall, University of Calgary over here. It's always going to be a desirable area. And not ultra, you can buy some really expensive homes in here, but there's also some very affordable options as well for the Northwest. So definitely one of my favorite parts of the city, and I would highly recommend this part of Calgary for a family. And you can kind of throw in Varsity, kind of maybe slightly different than these areas, but not far off, very similar. Varsity Estates, one of the nicest parts of Calgary. If you've got the money, I would definitely consider this part of the city. Dalhousie and Ranchlands, these are kind of like your typical Northwest neighborhoods. Very suburban. You've got good schools, Real estate's not terribly expensive in these areas. Actually, I would consider ranchlands as probably the most affordable of the Northwest communities. I mean, there are pockets of Dalhousie that are ultra expensive over here, but for the most part, I would say it's not out of control in terms of how pricey it is. So I definitely consider these areas. Edgemont, one of the best neighborhoods in Calgary. If you're curious, I've got a video specifically on Edgemont, which you can find right here, where I go into much more detail. This is one of the prime neighborhoods in Calgary. All sorts of different sub-regions of the neighborhoods, and you can't go wrong with this area. Some of the best schools in Calgary, easy access to John Laurie Boulevard and Crowchild Trail, lots of shopping options around here, easy access to Nose Hill Park, and this is one of the most scenic neighborhoods in Calgary. I really like Edgemont quite a bit, one of my favorite spots in the city. Let's touch on Silver Springs and Scenic Acres. Now, these are prime areas if you're an outdoors lover. This is a giant ridge. All this green that you can see here is a ridge overlooking the Board River Valley with plenty of parks and trails throughout these neighborhoods. I like Silver Springs a lot because it's a bit of an older neighborhood in the Northwest community, and you can find homes that are relatively affordable, and it's a good spot for someone that wants to renovate a home and then fix it up and maybe flip it. So it's a good spot for that. It's a very safe neighborhood, very quiet. Scenic Acres is a bit newer compared to Silver Springs, but the same kind of idea with the park space and the views and stuff like that. Let's touch on the Hamptons now. This is an exclusive, rich golf course community, and a great spot for families as well. I have no issues whatsoever with the Hamptons. I think it's one of the nicer spots in the city. Citadel is kind of like more of like an entry-level starter option in the Northwest region. But good spot for families. It's not overly expensive, but it's still very safe, very quiet. Some good schools around this part of town. If we look at Arbor Lake, this is the only lake community in the northwest part of Calgary. And yeah, I would consider this as well. Again, it's hard to go wrong with anything in the northwest. This is a very desirable part of the city. The thing about Arbor Lake, you've got excellent access to Crowfoot Crossing, this giant yellow thing that you see here. This is a giant shopping complex. So you've got good access to schools, parks, shopping, again, very safe community. And the standout area in terms of being a family-friendly neighborhood in the Northwest, I would put a star beside Tuscany, this giant neighborhood that you see right here. Lots of schools in this neighborhood, very safe community, very popular. You see a lot of sales here, a very desirable part of the city. And it's also quite scenic. There's all sorts of different ridges and trails, and there's wooded areas. It's a very diverse landscape. It's a huge neighborhood. It covers a good chunk of the Northwest. It's almost like its own town. And if you're looking for a Northwest family-friendly neighborhood, this could be the spot for you. There are parts that are ultra expensive, and there are parts that are quite reasonable. So there's all sorts of different sub-regions of Tuscany, but this is one to consider as well. Now let's briefly touch on Royal Oak and Rocky Ridge. I would consider these areas as a family. Again, they're very suburban. There's not much crime, very safe areas, lots of park spaces you can see here. And they're quite scenic. If you go from downtown Calgary up into this area, you're going uphill the entire time. So you see a lot of views of the Rocky Mountains and of the city. And again, they're just kind of like your typical newer suburban areas of Calgary. Now, I'll just briefly touch on this part of Calgary. This is all fairly new. You see brand new construction here like all over the place. So it's not terribly unique yet. It's all still fairly new. In terms of being family friendly, I would say they are. They're just not as established and mature as other parts of Calgary, but if you're looking for brand new, I would definitely consider this part of town. Now let's touch on this chunk of the city over here. You've got Panorama Hills, Coventry Hills, Country Hills, Harvest Hills, and this is one of the most active regions of Calgary in terms of real estate sales. I think it is because of a few reasons. The homes in here, for the most part, fit into like the average price ranges in the city. So there's a huge market for that. A lot of schools in this part of town, a lot of shopping, not overly pricey, close proximity to the airports. And one good thing about this area that I've noticed is that people move into this area because they want to be out of the Northeast. Even though it has a Northeast abbreviation, it's not this part of the Northeast that has maybe a bit of a stigma. So I think people are also targeting this area for that reason. This part of town, from kind of like this McEwen, Sandstone, Bennington, Huntington, Thorncliffe, I find this chunk of Calgary is just very typical. Again, these homes here are not ultra expensive. They're not The low end, they're just kind of average. And there are a lot of schools around here. You get excellent access to Nose Hill Park, easy access to downtown from 4th Street. There's Edmonton Trail, 4th Street, Centre Street. Easy to get around. There's just not that much to talk about in this area. But if you moved in here with the family, I don't think you'd regret it. They're just it's not as exciting as other parts of Calgary. Next up, I'll touch on Northeast Calgary and parts of the Southeast. Now, a lot of people just lump this entire region into one and just call it the Northeast, even though the dividing line is Memorial Drive, which is around here. That divides Southeast Calgary to Northeast. Now, it's a huge region of the city. You can't just write it off and say it's all bad. There are bad parts of the Northeast for sure, but I would say it's very street specific, and there are also very nice parts of the Northeast too. So I'll try my best here to give you a quick rundown. So let's touch on the deep Northeast parts of this area first, which are all fairly new. So you've got Skyview Ranch, you've got Redstone, Cornerstone, Cityscape, Saddle Ridge, all fairly new, fairly affordable as well, and I don't find it dangerous at all. And in fact, there are some good aspects to the Northeast. They've got good infrastructure, there's lots of easy connecting trails to get around the city, easy access to the airport, and I would say it's definitely very family friendly in this part of town. Next up, I'll just touch on this region of the city over here from, say, Falcon Ridge all the way down to the southeast area of Forest Lawn. Now, this part of Calgary gets a bit of a bad reputation as being maybe not the nicest part of Calgary, but I would say the main idea behind this part of the city is that it's very street specific. There are parts of it that are kind of sketchy, especially along like the C-train line in like the Marlborough area, Arundel. But if you go into those neighborhoods, there are some nice streets with some very nice people. And there are some nice neighborhoods in here too. You've got Coral Springs is a lake community, very nice spot. I think Monterey Park, not too bad. Again, the idea behind this part of Calgary is just very street specific, and I'll leave it at that. So moving along, let's move into South Calgary. Now this chunk of the city over here is very industrial, so it's not like a residential component of Calgary. And let's touch on this region of the city over here. So I'll start off with this chunk of the city over here. The areas around the Glenmore Reservoir are very expensive, very upscale, good parks, good schools, good real estates. I would have no problems at all moving into areas like this, like the Pump Hill, the Bayview, Eagle Ridge, very nice areas of the city. Kelvin Grove, you can lump in there as well. This area here, Acadia, is one of the up-and-coming neighborhoods, I think. A lot of schools in this area, lots of parks, very convenient central location, easy access to places like Chinook Center. You can just jump onto McLeod Trail and get to downtown. Very safe. I think it's a very family-friendly neighborhood, and the real estate prices aren't crazy expensive as well. So in terms of South Calgary, this might be an area to put a star beside. Haysboro is, I would say, it's kind of similar to Acadia. These areas over here, Oak Ridge, Cedar Brae, Braeside, Woodbine, Woodlands, I would say for the most part, these are just very typical southern neighborhoods. I'm not saying that in a bad way, they're just very, very average, I would say. A lot of schools around here, a lot of parks. I find they're all very safe. This part of town is just very average. And you've got excellent access to Fish Creek Park, which is this area over here, one of the biggest parks in North America. I'll touch on these two, Willow Park and Lake Bonavista. I would definitely put a star beside these two neighborhoods. Let's touch on Lake Bonavista first. This is one of the best neighborhoods in all of Calgary, in my opinion. Lots of schools in this neighborhood, some of the better schools. You've got excellent homes that are backing onto both of these lakes. Easy access to South Center Mall, which I believe is right over here. This is a prime neighborhood in the city, and I would put a star beside this one. Maple Ridge and Willow Park, similar kind of idea. They're not lake communities, but they do have homes backing onto this golf course, a private golf course. And Willow Park has a lot of different sub-regions. So some areas of it are ultra expensive, and some parts of it are actually quite affordable. I would put a star beside the Willow Park as well. I think it's a very nice neighborhood. Next up, let's lump in, like we've got Queensland, we've got Bonavista Downs, we've got Parkland, Deer Ridge, Deer Run. The thing I like about this part of Calgary is that it's pushed into this Fish Creek Park. So you don't see like major thoroughfare roads running through this neighborhood. I think it's all fairly quiet. Some good shopping options, a lot of schools in this neighborhood. I find that it's very family friendly, very safe. And I would definitely put a star beside this area. One of the most affordable parts of Calgary to buy a single-family detached home is in this area over here. Maybe not Parkland, but in parts of Deer Ridge and Queensland, it'd be very affordable. Next up, I'll touch on the southeast part of Calgary. Now I've got a video specifically on Southeast Calgary where I go into all these neighborhoods in much more detail, and you can find that video by clicking this link right here. So Riverbend over here, I would say this is a good starter family community in Calgary. Lots of schools here. I find it's very safe. Good access routes on Glenmore Trail and on Deerfoot Trail. Lots of parks around here along the border, the Carburn Park and Border Valley. Lots of parks around here with Carburn Park, Sue Higgins Park, easy access to the Bow River. You've got easy access to Corey Park over here, which is very unique. It's kind of like half residential, half commercial industrial, very unique part of the city. Next up, I think you can lump in Douglasdale with parts of Mackenzie Lake. And the idea behind this part of Calgary is that a lot of the homes are backing onto this Bow River Valley right here. So you've got some excellent scenic views of the valley. A lot of schools around here, lots of good parks. I find this part of Calgary is very safe as well. Easy access with Deerfoot Trail right here. And next up, I'm going to touch on this chunk of the city right here. This is one of the more active parts of Calgary in terms of real estate sales. Very popular area of the city. So you've got Auburn Bay and Mahogany are both newer lake communities. Very popular amongst families. I would have no hesitation moving to these areas if you're starting a family. Copperfield and New Brighton are more kind of your typical price ranges in the deep suburbs. Not ultra expensive, but you see a lot of like the 2-story front garage homes here in average price ranges. Again, lots of schools, lots of parks, very popular neighborhood. Mackenzie Town is a bit older compared to these areas. Mackenzie Town kind of has like an American town vibe to it, so I like it quite a bit. This part of the area is more expensive than this part of Mackenzie Town. But this whole region is very popular with families, and I think it'll continue to get better as the C-train line comes into this part of town. Now that's just a brief summary of this chunk of the city. These areas all have their own unique qualities, but just to summarize, that's how I would describe them. Very family-friendly part of the city. And last up, I'm going to touch on this southwest chunk of the city. So I'll start off with Mindapore and Sundance. These are two very popular lake communities in southwest Calgary. You've also got easy access to Fish Creek Park. Some of the best schools are in these two areas. You've got easy access to some of the shopping options in this yellow area. Easy access to the Ring Road, Stony Trail right here, and McLeod Trail. Definitely two very popular neighborhoods right here. Chaparral, you can kind of lump into that similar idea to Sundance and Mindapore. I think I like these two areas more than Chaparral though, but kind of the same idea. Walden, Legacy, Silverado, these are all brand new parts of Calgary. It's hard to give an idea of how they are because they are so new, but as a family, I'd have no issue moving to these brand new parts of the south. This chunk of the city, so Shawnee Slopes, you've got some older parts of it over here, and you've got some brand new developments over here. There's a lot of condos and townhouses in this chunk of Shawnee Slopes. Now let's touch on Evergreen. So there's this part of Evergreen, and there's the Evergreen Estates over here, which is the more expensive part of it. Evergreen's a very active part of Calgary in terms of real estate sales. Lots of schools in this neighborhood, very family friendly, very safe. I'd have no issues moving a family into this part of Calgary. And the rest here, kind of Shaughnessy, Somerset, Bridlewood, they're just like your typical southern suburbs. There's not much to say about them other than they're quieter, very family friendly. They're not overly expensive. They're just very typical parts of the south. And you can lump in Millrise into that category as well. Well, there you have it. That's my rundown of what Calgary looks like in terms of being family friendly. Now, this is just my perspective, and Calgary covers a massive area. So if you are thinking of moving here and you have some questions, feel free to reach out. I'd love to help you out. You can call, text, email, or comment. I will get it and get back to you. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.